4th century, a group of monks fled to the deserts of Egypt, and they began to pray this prayer. We beg you, God, make us truly alive. We beg you, make us truly alive. Which sort of begs the question, doesn't it? What does it mean to be truly alive? 15 years ago, I went to Divinity school looking for answers to that question. Upon graduation, when most of my classmates ended up in a place like this, in a congregation of people, I ended up in a congregation of plants. That's not the whole truth. There were also some people involved. I was hired by a small Methodist church to start a community garden in the rural Piedmont area of North Carolina. The garden was called Anathoth, and we took our name and our mission from the book of Jeremiah to plant gardens and eat what they produce and to seek the peace of the city. We saw planting gardens and seeking peace as really symbiotic activities. Exactly the kind of thing that a church should be doing, sort of like planting marigolds with your tomatoes. We were given land, and we soon turned an acre into a lush garden of biointensive beds. We planted blueberry bushes, had all kinds of fresh vegetables. We dug a well, we built a barn. We built a high tunnel passive solar greenhouse so that we could grow year-round. And when our members joined, we invited folks from all around the community to join, and when they joined, they would work several hours a week in exchange for their produce. It was sort of a co-op. People came from all around, and Anathoth quickly became known as a community gathering place where everyone was welcome. We had Spanish-English classes. We started a youth program, and we hosted biweekly potlucks. We brought the gifts of the garden to the church, blessing the seed and soil on the altar, and we brought the gifts of the church out to the garden, sharing the bread and wine of the Lord's Supper right out among the beds of collards and kohlrabi. It wasn't perfect, despite that beatific vision I've just described, and we had our squabbles just like any other human community. But on its best days, Anathoth gave me a glimpse of what I think of as the kingdom of heaven, a place where everyone has an equal place at the table, a place of conviviality and delight. I realized that this vision of what I'd witnessed at Anathoth, a vision that I would call soil and sacrament, I saw this vision as soil being sacramental. That is, soil could be a channel of divine love and mercy in its ability to feed people. And I realized that this vision of soil and sacrament was not a new vision. It was, in fact, a very old vision, one of our oldest human stories. We all know the creation story from Genesis, God creating Adam and Eve. But what's interesting is the Hebrew text there. The Lord God formed the Adam, from the Adama, the fertile soil. And I love that etymological clue there as to how inextricably linked our lives are to the soil. The Adam formed from the Adama. In the Genesis story, though, we're not just soil. It tells us that we're also formed in the divine image, inspired by the very breath of God. And I think that makes us capable of greatness. This vision of soil and sacrament, what St. Augustine called animated earth, that's us, humans, was not limited to just Anathoth. I began to learn about others who were doing similar projects. And around the country right now, there's really a movement, a sort of food and faith movement of other groups like Anathoth building these places, recreating a food system. And in 2011, I set out to visit some of these places, and I ended up writing a book about what I'd learned. The first place I went to was a Trappist Monastery in the South Carolina Lowcountry, a place called Mebken Abbey. These Trappist monks are part of the Benedictine tradition, a 1,500-year-old monastic tradition that's very much concerned with the cultivation of soil and the cultivation of the soul. And if you're looking for sort of ground zero of the food and faith movement, you need to look no further than these guys right here. That's quite a crew. I do a yearly retreat at this monastery, and these guys have become my friends. And their motto is ora et labora, which is Latin for prayer and work. And that's pretty much what they do. They pray and they work. They get up at 3 a.m. to begin praying, and they pray for the next 5.5 hours. And then at 8:30, when most of us are just sort of rolling out of bed, they actually start going to work. Their work is to grow mushrooms. That's how they earn their livelihood. They grow oysters and shiitake mushrooms. And I got to work with them in their mushroom shed that week. And I worked with Brother Dismas, and I asked Dismas one day as we were packing cottonseed hulls and wheat chaff into these plastic bags where the mushrooms grow. I said, Dismas, why did you come to the monastery? And he said, I studied academic theology at Notre Dame for 4 years, and I realized that my faith was all from here up, right? I came to the monastery, he said, because I wanted to learn to put the faith in my hands. And by growing mushrooms, by engaging in manual labor, he was doing that. He was putting the faith in his hands. In June, I traveled out to Washington State to the Skagit Valley where many of our vegetables and fruits are grown. And I met Bob Ekblad. Bob's the founder of Tierra Nueva Ministries, New Earth Ministries. And Bob and his colleague, Chris Hoke, work with folks on the margins, migrant workers, people from gangs, people struggling with addiction. And they've started several micro-enterprise businesses. They've started a small CSA farm and a bakery and a coffee roasting business. Bob told me something that week that was really profound. He said, the front lines of sustainability should be led by those most wounded by the system. The front lines of sustainability should be led by those who've been most wounded by the system. And that stuck with me. I want to tell you about their coffee business. They buy beans from Honduran growers, organic beans. They have a direct relationship with these growers. And the folks who work there do the roasting. This guy, Zach Joy, on the right, was a former crystal meth cook. And now at Tierra Nueva, at the underground coffee business, he's become their chief coffee roaster. So meth cook to coffee roaster. I love that transfer of skills. Zach told me as I worked with him that week and learned about coffee roasting, he said, after wasting so much of my life, I just love having something constructive to do with my hands. And as those beans spill out of the roasting drum into the cooling tray, Zach holds his hands over each batch of beans and he blesses them. I drink that coffee every day, and I love knowing that my beans have been blessed by Zach. In the fall, I traveled to Adama Farm. Adama is a Jewish farm up in Connecticut, and I went during the Feast of Sukkot, the fall harvest festival. Adama trains 20-somethings in the arts of organic agriculture and Jewish spirituality. And their day begins early, like the monks. It doesn't begin at 3, not quite so early, but it begins at 6, when they get up and they meet in the red yurt for prayer. They don't call it prayer, they call it davening, and it's a kind of sung communal prayer, some of the most beautiful melodies I've ever heard. And so I woke up at 6 and davened with these folks. And after davening, we would head out to work on the 4-acre CSA, the organic farm that they have, or perhaps go and work in the picklearium, which they call the Center for Cultural Proliferation. That's what they call their picklearium, making kimchi and sauerkraut, or they might go and milk the goats and make chev cheese. One of the most fascinating things for me about that week I spent at Adama Farm, and by the way, you remember Adam from Adama, fertile soil. So one of the fascinating things about Adama Farm is their practice of Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath. On Friday evening at Adama, there were about 200 of us gathered for Sukkot. About 5 or 6 on Friday evening, everything just sort of shifted, and time sort of entered a different space. People turned off their cell phones. You didn't see people walking around doing this. They turned off computers. And we shared this amazing meal, and all next day we shared all these meals and drank wine. It was just this wonderful time of rest and enjoyment. One of the guys that I met that week was Nigel Savage. Nigel is the director of Hazon, the largest Jewish environmental organization in the country. Hazon means vision. And Nigel told me, he said, Sabbath shouldn't just be for Jews. He said the world needs a Sabbath. And if you think about it, ecologically, spiritually, physically, our world does need a Sabbath. As I think back about what I learned on my journey, I want to leave you with 3 things. Whatever your deepest held convictions or beliefs, don't let those stay just in your head. Let them become the work of your hands. As we think about how to reform our broken food system, we should be supporting people from the margins. We should be supporting those who've been most deeply wounded by this system, and we should be elevating them to positions of leadership, and then we should follow them. And finally, the world needs a Sabbath. The world needs a rest. The goal is not endless consumption. The goal is not endless work. The goal, I would say, looks more like this: conviviality, rest, and delight, sitting as equals at the same table. Those 4th century monks fled to the deserts of Egypt not to escape the world. They fled to create a new one. Many of us in today's faith communities are we're fleeing from this industrial food system, but we're also creating new ones. We're creating systems that look less like a system and more like 10,000 small acts of love. We are hungry to create patterns of life in which everyone can flourish. And in the ways that we grow and share our food, we're learning to pray this prayer: we beg you, make us truly alive. Thank you.